Welcome to the Tarn Shelf hike in Mount Field National Park, Tasmania, Australia. Join me as we step back in time to see the photos of my hikes 6 and 7 of 75 in Tassie. These two hikes are my first and second attempts to complete the circuit walk of the Tarn Shelf during the first few days in September in heavily snowed conditions. During these early days, you'll see I was out of my depth and in over my head. However, valuable lessons were learned. As we walk, I'll share with you a few of my hike journal excerpts from the second attempt, which was my hike 7. On future attempts of the Tarn Shelf hike, you'll see I start to film my experiences on the Tarn Shelf, but I wanted to share with you one of my earliest hikes in Tassie. So for now, let's just enjoy the photo shot over that week. Hike journal excerpt. I choose to live a meaningful life. I'm often caught saying that to my mountain men, especially when I'm doing something, well, at the upper limit or indeed just beyond my perceived capabilities. For both of us. We left our Land Cruiser at dawn at Lake Dobson. Happily chatting, we hiked along its snow-covered edges and up through the absolutely magical Pandani Groves. The way the light was filtering down through the forest this morning gave the forest a mystical feel. I was so excited to show my mountain man all that I'd seen these past 6 days whilst I'd been hiking up here on photography-focused hikes, and he'd been back working in Queensland. Soon, we turned to head up the steeper snow-covered Urquhart track, winding our way until we met the road to the Mount Mawson ski field. Here, we paused to take in some spectacular escarpment views, surprised at how high we had hiked so quickly. After taking some pics and marvelling at the landscape, we headed out across the windy and very snow-covered snow gum track. This is where Mount Field reminded us not to take the snowy alpine conditions lightly. My mountain man and I had been throwing around guesses at how deep the snow was on our tiny track. It was our first time hiking on this snow gum track, as I'd taken another route up through Mount Mawson Day Use Facility during my last 6 days walking up here. We moved really slowly and with great care, testing each step with our hiking poles. Step, kick to make a step, kick. To our dismay, both of us kept falling through the top layer, sinking thigh deep and once even bum deep in the snow. This is never a fun situation for anyone, and we're both thinking if only we had snowshoes. Now that would have made hiking here so much easier. When hiking on a new track, and in this case through deep soft snow, the other issue from my mountain man and I was deciphering where the track was, as the rocks and vegetation were, of course, covered in snow. This lack of being able to sight the track complicated our progress and upped the risk factor considerably. Not only couldn't we see the track, we also didn't know what it was made up of. Was there boardwalk underneath, or rock steps, or gravel path, or boulders, ones where you could get your ankle caught in? How would one know? That's a much higher risk situation when you can't predict what lays underneath and when you're not used to hiking in these sorts of alpine conditions. For many, this new and complex terrain would slow things down or would be somewhat really annoying. In my spinal-based situation, the effects are more considerable. There's issues with balance, flexibility, weight transfer when your footsteps sink to knee-deep or worse. Then there's the associated risk of increased spinal pain, let alone the generalised muscle soreness that goes hand in hand when anyone who goes hiking when you're early on in your fitness building phase, which is exactly where I stood in hike 6 and 7 of 75 in Tasmania. One thing's for sure, I couldn't do this type of terrain solo, not at the moment anyway, and whilst it's true to say that I'm definitely goal-driven, safety always comes first, every single time, no matter what. Here, even my big, strong mountain man struggled. The other issue was that my mountain man had chosen to wear jeans instead of his soft shell hiking pants. It didn't take long before his jeans became really wet. Occasionally we saw the pink tape hanging from trees, which ourselves that the snow gum track didn't last for very long. I was really glad that this is one of the things I usually do when on a complex hike, is I stop by the ranger station and have a good chat to him before I set out. And as we made our way to Lake Seal Lookout, we kept following along the snow gum track and started to get even better views of the escarpment and all across the snow-covered mountains. It's not only the 360-degree views that are set to inspire us all up here on the Tarn Shelf, it's also the diversity of the rocks. I admired the brightly covered contrasting lichen which covered the rock formations in the sunshine. Oh, they were so beautiful. Would have loved to have stayed here and explored up here for a couple of hours. However, we could see way off in the distance that the weather was starting to change. So the question was, how much further would we wander and explore? This is our first time hiking up here together, and given the conditions, not more than a kilometre I would think. That seemed annoying to do such a small hike, but as I'm always saying on any hike to the conditions. And today's conditions were, well, they were quite difficult to say the least. Very challenging. Although today's conditions collided with my spinal issues to kick my butt severely, it also taught me a precious lesson based around finding the positives. As always, I just want to say finally that I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next hike. Bye for now.